This is the story of a perfect facade, a life so picture-perfect it would make you sick. Meet Wendy Engelbert, your classic suburban housewife, 3 kids, and a doting husband. A house that could be featured in a magazine. She had it all, except maybe happiness. Behind closed doors, Wendy was hiding a dark secret, one that would spiral out of control and lead to a shocking murder. It all started with a simple friendly chat with the neighbor's daughter, Alexa. They bonded over shared anxieties and small-town gossip, but their connection quickly became something more, something forbidden. As their relationship became more intense, so did the lies, the jealousy, and the desperation. This is the true story of a housewife's secret affair with her neighbor's daughter. And it's a story that will make you question if you really know your neighbors and if the people we trust most are capable of the darkest deeds. The quaint, manicured lawns of Oakhaven Estates whispered of a life well lived. Perfect houses, each a testament to the American dream, lined the streets, their windows gleaming like polished gems. At 17, Elmwood Lane, a life seemingly straight out of a home decor magazine unfolded. Wendy Engelbert, a woman with a smile that could melt butter, had the kind of life every woman envied. A handsome, successful husband, Harrison, well-behaved children, and a home that oozed cozy comfort. On Sundays, Wendy baked apple pie for the neighbors, her infectious laughter ringing through the street as she welcomed everyone with open arms. But beneath the veneer of perfection, a simmering discontent brewed. Wendy, despite having a life most women would kill for, felt a hollow emptiness inside. Years of suburban monotony had worn her down, leaving her craving something more, something different. The routine of school plays, PTA meetings, and grocery runs felt like a gilded cage, suffocating her spirit. Then came Alexa Hernandez, the new girl in town. With her rebellious streak, her sparkling eyes, and a carefree attitude that Wendy had long since forgotten, Alexa was like a breath of fresh air, a jolt of electricity in Wendy's stagnant world. Their first encounter, a chance meeting at the community pool, was innocuous enough. But a shared glance, a whispered joke, and a spark ignited. The spark quickly became a flame, consuming Wendy in a whirlwind of secret meetings, stolen glances, and whispered confessions. The bond between them, though forbidden and dangerous, was undeniable. Wendy, starved for attention and excitement, found herself drawn to Alexa's youthful energy and carefree spirit. She craved the validation, the excitement, the escape from her mundane existence that Alexa offered. But their relationship, built on a foundation of lies and stolen moments, was a ticking time bomb. The whispers of disapproval started to build, fueled by the growing unease in the neighborhood. Wendy's increasingly erratic behavior, her strained relationship with Harrison, and her obsession with Alexa had started to raise eyebrows. One night, after a heated argument with Alexa, Wendy's facade finally cracked. A shattered vase, a hurled insult, and a desperate plea for Alexa's affection revealed the depths of Wendy's obsession. The seed of doubt had been planted, and the quiet suburban life that had been so carefully cultivated was about to unravel, leading to a tragedy that would forever stain the streets of Oakhaven Estates. For Alexa Hernandez, it was a typical Friday night. She'd spent the afternoon hanging out with friends, laughing and sharing secrets over a pizza dinner. She had no idea that her life was about to take a tragic turn. The last time anyone saw Alexa alive was around 8 p.m., walking home from her friend's house. She was humming a tune as she strolled down the sidewalk, unaware of the danger lurking in the shadows. When her parents went to bed, they assumed she was in her room, engrossed in her phone, as usual. But as the night wore on and the house remained eerily silent, a feeling of dread settled in. The discovery of Alexa's body the next morning sent shockwaves through the peaceful community. Police tape cordoned off the crime scene, a stark contrast to the pristine lawns and colorful flower beds. Alexa's body, discovered in a secluded part of the woods behind her home, bore the chilling marks of a brutal struggle. The Engelbert house, a few doors down, stood like an island of tranquility amidst the storm of fear and speculation. Inside, Wendy Engelbert, the picture-perfect housewife, sat stiffly on the couch, her face a mask of grief. Harrison, his brow furrowed with concern, tried to comfort his wife. But the silence in the house was deafening, broken only by the faint whirring of the air conditioner. As the first rays of dawn illuminated the neighborhood, whispers of suspicion began to swirl. The police, initially focused on the possibility of a random act of violence, started to delve deeper, their investigations leading them closer to the Engelbert household. The neighbors, accustomed to the idyllic facade of the Engelberts, couldn't understand how such a tragedy could have touched their world. But the whispers, fueled by a growing sense of unease, had already begun to taint their perception of the seemingly perfect family. They were no longer simply the neighbors next door, they were now potential suspects, each with their own secrets and motives. The tragedy in Oakhaven Estates was no longer just a random act of violence, it was a mystery wrapped in secrets, a web of deceit that would soon unravel, exposing the truth beneath the surface. Detective Miller, a grizzled veteran with a keen eye for detail, arrived at the crime scene with a grim determination. He had seen his share of tragedies in his years on the force, but something about this case felt different. The victim, a seemingly innocent teenager, and the quiet suburban setting, created a jarring dissonance. He felt like he was walking into a nightmare, one where the perfect facade of suburban life masked a darkness that ran deeper than anyone could imagine. The initial investigation yielded few clues. No witnesses, no signs of forced entry, and no obvious motive. But as the days turned into weeks, Detective Miller began to uncover a web of deceit that extended far beyond the quiet streets of Oakhaven Estates. The Engelbert family, initially portrayed as grief-stricken and innocent, started to show cracks under the scrutiny of the police. Wendy, despite her outward appearance of sorrow, exhibited an odd detachment, her responses to questioning often evasive and inconsistent. The detectives observed her carefully, noticing a subtle tension in her mannerisms, a flicker of guilt in her eyes, and a certain detachment from the tragedy that unfolded around her. Harrison, a successful businessman with a seemingly devoted family, seemed genuinely devastated by Alexa's death. But there was a coldness in his demeanor, a detachment from the emotional turmoil that enveloped the rest of the neighborhood. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that there was more to the Engelbert family than met the eye. They had built a wall of perfection around themselves, a wall that now stood on shaky ground, threatened to crumble under the weight of the truth. The case was far from solved. Every new lead only seemed to complicate the investigation further. Detective Miller knew that the truth was hidden somewhere in the depths of their seemingly perfect lives. He just had to find it before the shadows swallowed them all. The police turned their attention to the first suspect, Mark, Alexa's father. A well-respected accountant, Mark had always projected an image of stability and success. But behind closed doors, things were far from perfect. Mark had a reputation for being strict and domineering, particularly when it came to his daughter's life choices. Alexa, a free spirit with dreams of becoming an artist, often clashed with her father over her ambitions and lifestyle. Their arguments were frequent and heated, culminating in a particularly explosive confrontation just days before her death. Neighbors reported hearing raised voices and even the sound of furniture being thrown during one of these disputes. Detectives began to piece together a timeline of events leading up to Alexa's murder. They learned that Mark had been home the night she died, and his alibi was shaky at best. He claimed to have been watching television in the living room, but neighbors reported seeing him pacing anxiously outside shortly before the police arrived. His behavior raised eyebrows. It was unusual for someone to be so visibly agitated after a tragedy. Moreover, investigators uncovered financial troubles that Mark had been hiding from his family. His accounting firm was facing scrutiny for embezzlement, and he stood to lose everything if the truth came out. With Alexa's impending move to art school looming, Mark feared she would expose his secrets if she learned about his financial woes. This motive for murder painted a darker picture of a father desperate to maintain control over his daughter's life and protect his own reputation. As detectives delved deeper into Mark's background, they discovered a history of aggression. Several colleagues had come forward with accounts of his temper and violent outbursts when under stress. This pattern of behavior suggested that he could easily lose control in a moment of anger, especially during a heated argument with Alexa. However, Mark maintained his innocence, claiming he loved his daughter and would never harm her. His grief seemed genuine. He cried openly at the scene and spoke passionately about how proud he was of Alexa's artistic talents. But was this sorrow a mask for deeper emotions? The police decided to keep Mark under surveillance while they pursued other leads. As they gathered more evidence, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were only scratching the surface of a much larger story, a story filled with secrets, lies, and perhaps more suspects waiting in the wings. As the investigation progressed, attention shifted to the second suspect, Sarah, Alexa's best friend. The two had been inseparable since childhood, sharing everything from secrets to dreams. But beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect friendship lay a web of jealousy and competition that had begun to fray their bond. Sarah was a talented musician, often overshadowed by Alexa's artistic prowess. While both girls were passionate about their crafts, there was an unspoken rivalry that had grown over the years. In recent months, Alexa's acceptance into a prestigious art school had intensified these feelings in Sarah, who had struggled to find her own path in the shadow of her friend's success. On the night of Alexa's murder, Sarah claimed she was at home practicing for an upcoming performance. However, her alibi was weak, and neighbors reported seeing her car parked near Alexa's house around the time of the incident. When confronted by detectives, Sarah became defensive, insisting she had just driven by to clear her head. Investigators dug deeper into Sarah's life and discovered a troubling pattern. She had recently posted several ambiguous messages on social media that hinted at feelings of betrayal and abandonment. One post read, "Sometimes the people you love the most can hurt you the deepest." Friends noted that Sarah had been increasingly withdrawn and moody leading up to Alexa's death. Moreover, detectives learned that Sarah had been struggling with her own mental health issues. She had been seeing a therapist for anxiety and depression, which raised concerns about her emotional state at the time of the murder. Could a moment of rage or despair have driven her to harm her best friend? As they continued their investigation, detectives uncovered a series of text messages exchanged between Alexa and Sarah in the days leading up to the tragedy. The messages revealed heated arguments about their futures and Sarah's feelings of inadequacy. One particularly alarming message from Alexa read, "If you can't support me, then maybe we shouldn't be friends anymore." This revelation painted a picture of a volatile friendship on the brink of collapse. While Sarah had always portrayed herself as Alexa's biggest supporter, the texts suggested deep-seated resentment that could have escalated into something far more sinister. Despite these findings, Sarah maintained her innocence. She expressed profound grief over Alexa's death and insisted she would never hurt her friend. Her tears appeared genuine, but detectives couldn't help but wonder if they were masking something darker. As the investigation continued, police decided to keep a close eye on Sarah while they explored other potential suspects. The tension between friendship and rivalry loomed large in this case, leaving detectives questioning whether jealousy could truly lead someone to commit such an unthinkable act. As detectives continued their investigation into Alexa's murder, they turned their attention to Wendy, a close friend of both Alexa and Sarah. Known for her supportive demeanor, Wendy had always been the glue holding the group together. However, beneath her nurturing exterior lay a complex web of emotions that hinted at deeper issues. Wendy had long admired Alexa's artistic talent, often expressing her admiration but masking a growing envy. Friends recalled Wendy's offhand remarks about how she wished she could be as talented as Alexa. While these comments were often dismissed as harmless self-deprecation, they began to take on a darker tone in the weeks leading up to the murder. Wendy had become increasingly withdrawn, sharing vague social media posts about feeling unseen and overlooked. One particular post struck a chord. "Sometimes it feels like I'm just a shadow in everyone else's spotlight." On the night of Alexa's murder, Wendy claimed she was at home watching movies alone. Yet, her alibi lacked solid verification. No one could confirm her whereabouts during the critical hours. Surveillance footage captured her car parked near Alexa's apartment around the estimated time of the incident. When confronted by detectives, Wendy's calm facade crumbled into defensiveness. "I was just driving around to clear my head. I didn't go to see Alexa," she exclaimed, her voice shaky. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered a series of text messages exchanged between Wendy and Alexa in the days leading up to the murder. In these messages, Wendy expressed frustration over feeling overshadowed by Alexa's upcoming art show. "You're so talented, it's hard not to feel like I'm just in your shadow," one message read, revealing an emotional undercurrent that suggested more than mere friendship. Witnesses also reported a heated argument between Wendy and Sarah shortly before Alexa's death. The confrontation was marked by raised voices, and several bystanders noted Wendy storming away from Sarah's apartment, visibly upset. This incident added another layer of complexity to the investigation, suggesting that Wendy's emotions were running high. During questioning, detectives laid out the evidence against her, pressing for answers. "You were unhappy with Alexa's success," one detective stated bluntly. "What really happened that night?" Wendy's composure faltered as she protested, "I would never hurt Alexa. She was my friend." Her emotional reaction raised further suspicions among the detectives. "Then why were you near her apartment?" another detective pressed. "What were you really doing there?" Wendy hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. "I wanted to talk to her to tell her how I felt," she stammered, but her explanation felt insufficient and unconvincing. With mounting evidence and inconsistencies in her story, detectives decided to arrest Wendy. As she was taken into custody, disbelief rippled through their friend group. Many struggled to reconcile the nurturing friend they knew with the suspect now facing serious charges. Wendy's case served as a haunting reminder of how jealousy and unresolved emotions could fracture even the closest of friendships, revealing that beneath the surface of camaraderie lay a dangerous complexity that could lead to tragic consequences. Investigators uncovered a series of emails between Alexa and Wendy, revealing tension in their friendship. An email from Alexa expressed concern about Wendy's jealousy, stating, "Sometimes it feels like you're not happy for me." Wendy's response was defensive, suggesting unresolved conflict. Additionally, forensic analysis found Wendy's partial fingerprint on Alexa's bedroom doorframe. When confronted, Wendy claimed she was there to drop off a gift, but no such gift was found. Witness testimonies also emerged, with a neighbor recalling raised voices and hearing someone yell, "You'll never be as good as her." This indicated a possible confrontation between the two. Together, these pieces of evidence painted a troubling picture of jealousy and emotional turmoil leading up to Alexa's death. Based on the accumulating evidence, detectives moved to arrest Wendy. On the morning of the arrest, they approached her at her home. Wendy appeared surprised but composed as officers informed her of the charges related to Alexa's death. During the arrest, Wendy maintained her innocence, claiming she had nothing to do with Alexa's demise. "I was just trying to be a good friend," she insisted, but her demeanor raised suspicions among the investigators. At the station, Wendy was interrogated. Detectives presented the email exchanges and the fingerprint evidence, emphasizing the emotional strain in their relationship. They asked her to explain her whereabouts on the night of Alexa's death. Wendy struggled to provide a consistent account, leading to further scrutiny. As the interrogation progressed, Wendy's story began to unravel. She initially claimed she was at home alone, but later admitted she had gone to Alexa's house that evening. When pressed about the argument overheard by neighbors, she became defensive, insisting it was just a misunderstanding. With enough evidence to proceed, the district attorney filed charges against Wendy for second-degree murder. The prosecution argued that her jealousy and emotional turmoil culminated in a confrontation that tragically escalated. As news of the arrest broke, the community was left in shock. Friends and family of both Alexa and Wendy struggled to comprehend how a friendship could turn so dark. In the weeks following the arrest, Wendy's legal team began preparing for trial. They sought to challenge the interpretation of the evidence, arguing that the emails were taken out of context and that her fingerprint could have been left there on a previous visit. As the trial date approached, both sides braced for a highly publicized case that would reveal deeper truths about friendship, rivalry, and betrayal. The community awaited answers, hoping for justice for Alexa while grappling with the tragic fallout of a friendship gone awry. The trial began with a palpable tension in the courtroom. Friends and family of both Alexa and Wendy filled the seats, each side hoping for justice in a case that had captivated the community. The prosecution opened with a powerful statement, painting a vivid picture of the toxic friendship between Wendy and Alexa. They detailed the emotional turmoil Wendy experienced, highlighting the jealousy that festered over time. The lead prosecutor emphasized that the evidence, emails, witness testimonies, and the physical evidence from the scene painted a clear picture of intent. The defendant was not just a friend, she was a woman consumed by envy, the prosecutor stated. On that fateful night, that envy turned deadly. Wendy's defense attorney countered, arguing that the prosecution's narrative was one-dimensional. "This is not a case of murder, it's a case of tragedy," he asserted. He urged the jury to consider Wendy's state of mind, emphasizing that her actions were not premeditated but rather a result of emotional distress. The prosecution called several witnesses to the stand. Friends of both women testified about their relationship dynamics, revealing instances of jealousy and conflict. One close friend recounted a heated conversation she overheard between Wendy and Alexa just days before the incident, noting Wendy's frustration over Alexa's new relationship. Next, forensic experts presented evidence linking Wendy to the crime scene. They explained how her fingerprints were found on the murder weapon, a kitchen knife, along with Alexa's blood. The prosecution argued that this was irrefutable evidence of her involvement. Wendy's defense team sought to undermine this testimony by introducing evidence that pointed to other potential suspects, including an ex-boyfriend of Alexa's who had been seen near her home on the night of the murder. They argued that Wendy's fingerprints could have been left from a previous visit, insisting there was no direct evidence placing her at the scene during the crime. In a pivotal moment during the trial, Wendy took the stand. Her demeanor was shaky as she recounted her friendship with Alexa, portraying it as complex but ultimately loving. She spoke about how much she cared for Alexa and how devastated she was by her death. "I would never hurt Alexa," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "She was my best friend." The prosecution seized upon this moment, asking pointed questions about her jealousy and anger. They pressed her on whether she felt betrayed by Alexa's new relationship, leading Wendy to falter in her responses. As the trial neared its conclusion, both sides delivered their closing arguments. The prosecution reiterated their stance that Wendy's jealousy led to an impulsive act of violence. They urged the jury to consider the evidence and the emotional backdrop that fueled Wendy's actions. The defense argued for compassion, reminding jurors that emotions can cloud judgment and that Wendy did not have a motive strong enough to warrant a murder charge. "This is a tragic loss for everyone involved," the defense attorney concluded. "But it does not equate to murder." After several days of testimony and arguments, the jury began deliberations. The atmosphere was tense as they weighed the evidence against Wendy's emotional turmoil. They debated whether her actions were premeditated or a tragic consequence of an intense friendship gone wrong. Finally, after 2 days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. As the courtroom filled with anxious spectators, the foreperson stood to deliver the decision. "We find the defendant, Wendy, guilty of manslaughter." Gasps filled the room as emotions ran high. Wendy collapsed into tears, while Alexa's family exchanged looks of relief mixed with sorrow. The judge scheduled sentencing for several weeks later, allowing time for impact statements from both sides. In the weeks following the trial, the community was left reeling. Wendy was sentenced to 5 years in prison for manslaughter, a decision that sparked mixed reactions. Some felt it was too lenient, while others believed it was appropriate given the circumstances. Alexa's family struggled with their loss. They attended support groups and sought counseling to cope with the grief. They often reflected on the good times with Alexa, trying to remember her as she was before the tragedy. Wendy's family faced their own challenges. They visited her regularly in prison, grappling with feelings of shame and confusion. They tried to understand how a friendship could turn so destructive. Both families found themselves isolated from friends and neighbors who didn't know how to react. The case became a topic of gossip in the community, further complicating their healing processes. As time passed, both families began to seek closure in different ways. Alexa's family focused on honoring her memory through community outreach programs, while Wendy's family worked on understanding mental health issues and the importance of addressing emotional struggles before they escalate. Though the pain of the loss remained, both families slowly started to rebuild their lives, learning to navigate a world forever altered by one tragic event.